I spent $18,000 on a luxury cruise to celebrate my parents' 25th wedding anniversary together. The very next day, they dropped a bombshell. Mark, we decided it'll just be us and your sister. We need time for ourselves without any extra baggage. I was stunned, but instead of arguing, I quietly canceled the entire trip. The following morning, my phone lit up with angry calls, and that's when I discovered my father had actually tried to steal the cruise money back from me. You know how some families have that one person who's basically the workhorse? Yeah, that was me, Mark, 30 years old, working in IT, and somehow always a guy everyone expected to fix everything but never really appreciated. My family dynamics were pretty messed up when I look back on it now. My younger sister Lisa was basically the golden child. Everything she did was perfect to my parents' eyes. Meanwhile, I was just there, the reliable one who'd help out with whatever they needed, send money when times were tight, and never really got much recognition for any of it. Classic middle child syndrome, except I wasn't even the middle child. Living in this tight-knit family meant unwritten rules everywhere. Don't question Mom's decisions. Always support Lisa's latest venture. Show up to every family gathering with a smile and your wallet ready. I followed these rules for years because I thought that's what families did. Boy, was I wrong. The whole situation started when my parents' silver wedding anniversary was coming up. 25 years of marriage, and they kept dropping hints about wanting to do something special. Not subtle hints either. We're talking full-on conversations about how their friends went on amazing trips and how they never got to do anything fun. So naturally, I stepped up. I mean, who else would, right? Lisa was busy with her Instagram lifestyle, posting pictures of her coffee and complaining about how hard her part-time retail job was. My parents weren't exactly rolling in cash either. Dad worked construction, and Mom did bookkeeping for a small local business. Good honest work, but not Caribbean cruise money. I spent weeks researching the perfect trip. We're talking about an exclusive 7-day cruise to the Caribbean with all the fancy stuff. Premium dining, shore excursions, the works. The price tag? $15,000. That's not pocket change, even for someone in tech. But I figured this would be the thing that finally brought us together as a family. I remember the day I told them about it. We were sitting around a dinner table, one of those mandatory Sunday dinners where everyone pretends everything's perfect. I pulled up the cruise line website on my phone and showed them the ship, the itinerary, all the amenities. You'd think I just told them they won the lottery. Dad looked at the screen for a long moment, then looked at me with this expression I couldn't quite read. He nodded slowly and said something that should have been a red flag, that this was exactly what he expected from me. Not thanks, not excitement, just expectation. Like I was supposed to drop 15 grand on them just because Mom was more enthusiastic, at least on the surface. She started talking about what she'd packed, which port she was most excited about, whether the ship had a spa. But even her excitement felt off somehow. It was like she was already planning the trip without really acknowledging that I was the one making it happen. And Lisa? She immediately whipped out her phone and started taking pictures of my screen. Within an hour, she had posted on social media about this amazing Caribbean cruise the family was going on, complete with photos of the ship and captions about how generous her parents were to treat everyone to such an incredible vacation. That last part really got to me. Generous parents? I was the one dropping my savings on this thing, and somehow it became their generous gift. But I pushed down that feeling because I thought maybe, just maybe, this trip would change things. Maybe they'd finally see me as more than just a family ATM. I booked everything that night. Premium balcony suites, the fancy dining packages, even the shore excursion bundle, because I wanted this to be perfect. The confirmation email felt like Christmas morning. I was so excited to give my family this incredible experience. The next few weeks were filled with planning sessions that I wasn't really included in. Mom and Lisa would spend hours talking about outfits and spa appointments while I handled all the logistics. Flight bookings, travel insurance, making sure everyone's passports were current. All the boring stuff that nobody else wanted to deal with. Dad would occasionally ask about costs for add-ons, and I'd just wave him off and take care of it. By the time we were getting close to the departure date, I'd probably spent closer to $18,000 on the whole thing. But seeing my family excited made it feel worth it. Looking back now, I can see all the warning signs I ignored. The way they talked about the trip, like it was happening to them rather than being given to them. How they made plans without really including me in the conversation. The complete lack of gratitude or acknowledgement of what this was costing me. But at the time, I was just happy to see them happy. I thought I was building bridges, creating memories, doing something meaningful for the people I care about most. I had no idea I was actually setting myself up for the biggest betrayal of my life. 3 weeks before departure, everything changed. And when I say everything, I mean my entire relationship with my family got flipped upside down in the span of one conversation. So there I was, 3 weeks before this dream vacation I'd spent months planning and my life savings paying for, when my parents called me over for what they called a family meeting. You know how those go. Never good news when your parents use their serious voices and ask you to sit down. I walked into their living room thinking maybe they want to discuss final details or thank me properly for everything I'd done. Maybe they'd finally realize how much this whole thing cost and wanted to show some genuine appreciation. Man, was I about to get a reality check that would make my head spin. Dad was sitting in his usual recliner, and Mom was on the couch with this weird expression on her face. Not quite guilty, not quite defiant, but somewhere in between. Lisa was there too, which should have been my first clue that something was up. When my family wants to present a united front, they make sure the golden child is there to back them up. Dad cleared his throat and got straight to the point. They'd been thinking about the cruise, and they decided they wanted it to be just the three of them, parents and their precious daughter, celebrating their anniversary as a tight family unit. He said they needed quality bonding time without any complications or stress. I sat there for a second trying to process what I just heard. Complications? Stress? I was the one who planned everything, paid for everything, handled every single detail, so they wouldn't have to worry about anything. How exactly was I causing stress by giving them a free vacation? But it got worse. Mom chimed in with this fake sweet voice about how they'd really appreciate it if I could just cancel my portion of the trip and let the three of them enjoy this special family moment. Like I was some kind of travel agent instead of their son who just dropped 18 grand on them. Lisa, sitting there with that smug look I'd seen 1,000 times growing up, immediately jumped in to support their decision. She talked about how nice it would be to have this intimate family experience. Just parents and daughter celebrating love and commitment. She made it sound like my presence would somehow contaminate their perfect family bonding vacation. The way she said it, you'd think I was some distant relative who'd randomly insert himself into their private celebration, not the person who'd made this whole thing possible in the first place. She even had the audacity to suggest that I could plan my own vacation sometime when it wouldn't interfere with their family moments. The three of them were sitting there looking at me expectantly, like they had just proposed the most reasonable solution in the world. In their minds, I should be grateful for the opportunity to fund their exclusive family getaway while staying home like a good little wallet. They'd get their Caribbean cruise. Lisa would get her Instagram content, and I'd get the privilege of paying for it all. That's when it really hit me. I wasn't part of their family. I was their financial backer, someone they kept around because I was useful, but not someone they actually want to spend time with. The cruise wasn't about celebrating together. It was about them getting a free vacation funded by the family outsider. I didn't argue. I didn't throw a fit or demand explanations. I just nodded and told them I'd take care of it. They seemed relieved that I wasn't making a scene, probably thinking they'd handled this perfectly and I was being mature about the whole situation. Dad even patted my shoulder and said something about how he knew I'd understand that sometimes families need their special moments. Lisa immediately pulled out her phone and started talking about which excursion she wanted to book and whether the ship had good Wi-Fi for her social media posts. She was already planning her content strategy for the vacation I was paying for, but not allowed to attend. But here's the thing they didn't know about me. I'd been working in tech long enough to get really good at problem solving. And right then, sitting in that living room listening to my family casually exclude me from my own gift while planning how to enjoy it without me, I started solving a problem they didn't even know they had created. I went home that night and did exactly what they asked. I canceled the cruise. But I didn't just cancel my portion. I canceled the whole thing and got a full refund back to my credit card. Every penny of that $18,000 went right back where it came from. My account, my money, my decision. My phone started blowing up within hours. Apparently, they'd been so excited about their exclusive family vacation that they'd immediately started bragging to friends and posting social media hints about their upcoming getaway. Lisa had already updated her Instagram bio to include cruise emojis. When they tried to check their reservation status and found nothing, panic set in real quick. Dad called first, and I could hear the anger in his voice even through the phone. He wanted to know what I'd done and why their cruise wasn't showing up in the system. Then Mom called crying about how embarrassed she was going to be when people found out the trip was canceled. Lisa sent a bunch of nasty texts about how I was ruining everything just because I was being a baby about not being included in their family bonding time. But the real kicker came when I checked my bank account the next morning. Dad had tried to use my banking information to rebook the cruise for him, Mom, and Lisa. My own father had attempted to steal $18,000 from me because he felt entitled to vacation I'd paid for, even after explicitly uninviting me from it. That unauthorized charge attempt was like getting slapped in the face with a cold fish. Here was concrete proof that they didn't just see me as unworthy of their company. They saw me as their personal ATM who should be grateful for the privilege of funding their exclusive family experiences while being excluded from them. That's when I knew for sure that these people weren't my family. They were just people who happened to share my DNA and saw me as a resource to be exploited. The cruise thing wasn't a misunderstanding about family dynamics. It was exactly who they were, and I've been too blind to see it for 30 years. So I did what any self-respecting person would do in that situation. I started planning my exit strategy, not just from the cruise drama, but from the whole toxic dynamic that had been draining me dry for decades. They thought they were teaching me about my place in their precious family hierarchy by excluding me from my own gift. Instead, they just taught me that I didn't want to be part of their family at all. And once I made that decision, everything else became crystal clear. I knew exactly what I needed to do, and trust me, it was going to be so much more satisfying than watching them post-vacation selfies with my money could ever be. After that banking incident with my dad, something clicked in my brain. I realized I wasn't just dealing with family drama anymore. This was straight-up fraud territory. So I did what any good IT guy would do. I started documenting everything. Screenshots, call logs, bank statements, text messages, the whole digital paper trail. You'd be amazed how much evidence people leave behind when they think they're untouchable. Every nasty text from Lisa, every voicemail from Mom guilt-tripping me about embarrassing them, every attempt Dad made to access my accounts. I saved it all. My phone became like an evidence locker for their bad behavior. But here's what really surprised me. Once I started paying attention to patterns instead of just reacting to their drama, I realized this stuff had been going on for years. I'd been so conditioned to just roll with their selfishness that I never really documented how bad it was. The cruise thing wasn't an isolated incident. It was just the first time they'd been brazen enough to steal from me directly. I started going back through old messages and bank records. Christmas presents I bought that Lisa claimed credit for. Emergency loans to my parents that somehow became gifts I was never supposed to expect back. Family dinners where I always picked up the check, but never got invited to help plan the menu. The more evidence I gathered, the more determined I became to completely rebuild my life. I stopped answering their calls and texts immediately. Let them stew in their own drama for a while. Instead, I focused on work, got a promotion, and started reconnecting with friends I'd lost touch with over the years. Turns out, when you're not constantly dealing with family crisis management, you have a lot more time and energy for actually living your life. Who knew? I started hitting the gym regularly, picked up some hobbies I'd abandoned, even went on a few dates. For the first time in years, I felt like I was living for myself instead of managing everyone else's problems. My family, meanwhile, was losing their minds trying to figure out why I'd gone radio silent. They were used to me being their on-call problem solver, and suddenly their personal ATM and IT support had vanished. Lisa couldn't get me to fix her laptop. Dad couldn't get me to help with his taxes. Mom couldn't get me to mediate their latest neighbor dispute. The voicemail started out angry, then moved confused, then got really desperate. They couldn't understand why I was being so stubborn over what they kept calling a simple misunderstanding. In their minds, they'd done nothing wrong by uninviting me for my own gift and then trying to steal money to replace it. I let them think I was just sulking and would eventually come around like I always had before. Meanwhile, I was getting my life together in ways I hadn't imagined possible. New apartment in a better neighborhood, away from their constant drop-by visits. New car that I actually wanted instead of the practical, family-friendly thing they convinced me to buy. New wardrobe that made me feel confident instead of invisible. The funniest part was watching their social media during this time. Lisa kept posting these passive-aggressive memes about ungrateful family members and how blood is supposed to be thicker than water. Mom shared those inspirational quotes about forgiveness and family bonds. Dad didn't post much, but when he did, it was usually complaints about how nobody helps anyone anymore. They had no idea I was doing better than I'd ever done in my life. They thought I was sitting at home feeling sorry for myself, waiting for them to throw me a bone so I could come crawling back into their dysfunction. Instead, I was planning the most epic comeback in family drama history. The opportunity came about 6 months later when Grandpa announced he was throwing a big party for his 50th wedding anniversary. The whole extended family was going to be there. Aunts, uncles, cousins, family friends, everyone. It was going to be one of those huge gatherings where everyone catches up and pretends to get along for one night. I RSVP'd yes, which probably surprised them since I've been ghosting everyone for months. But I had my reasons. See, I'd learned something important during my months of self-improvement. The best revenge isn't getting mad or getting even. It's getting better and then letting everyone see exactly what they lost. I showed up to that party looking like a completely different person. New haircut, new clothes, new confidence. I'd been working out and eating better, so I looked healthier than I had in years. But most importantly, I carry myself differently. No more slouching, no more apologetic smiles, no more trying to make everyone else comfortable at my own expense. The look on my family's faces when I walked in was priceless. They'd been expecting the same old defeated Mark they were used to pushing around. Instead, they got someone who looked successful, confident, and completely unbothered by their drama. Lisa actually did a double take, and I could see Mom whispering frantically to Dad about how different I looked. But I wasn't there to show off my glow-up, as satisfying as that was. I was there to deliver the evidence I'd been collecting for months. Not in some dramatic confrontation or angry speech. That's not my style. I had something much more effective in mind. I spent the evening being charming and social with everyone except my immediate family. I caught up with relatives I hadn't seen in years, made new connections, and generally had a great time. My parents and Lisa kept trying to corner me for private conversations, but I politely deflected and kept mingling. They probably thought I was being petty by giving them the cold shoulder. What they didn't realize was that I was setting the stage for the most perfectly timed revelation of their true colors. Sometimes the best justice comes not from attacking your enemies, but from simply letting them expose themselves to everyone who matters. About halfway through dinner, Lisa apparently decided she'd had enough of my polite distance. She stood up and started this whole speech about family and forgiveness, and how some people need to learn that you can't just abandon the people who love you over silly misunderstandings. She was looking right at me the whole time, obviously trying to put me on the spot in front of everyone. Then she really went for it. Started talking about how disappointed and hurt my parents had been when their ungrateful son ruined their anniversary cruise over some petty jealousy. How they'd saved up for months for this special trip, only to have it all fall apart because someone couldn't handle not being the center of attention for once. The whole room got quiet, and I could feel everyone looking at me waiting for my response. This was it, the moment I'd been preparing for. But instead of defending myself or arguing back, I did something that completely caught everyone off guard. I stood up calmly, walked over to Lisa, and gave her a polite hug. Then I thanked my parents for a lovely evening, told Grandpa happy anniversary, and headed for the exit. Just like that. No drama, No shouting match. No airing of dirty laundry in front of the whole family. I could hear the confused murmurs behind me as I walked away, and I knew Lisa was probably furious that her big moment had fallen flat. But here's where my months of planning paid off. See, I'd spent a lot of time thinking about the best way to handle this situation, and I'd realized that the truth is always more powerful than any argument. So about 5 minutes after I left that community center, every single person at that party received a text message from me. The message was simple and polite. I thanked everyone for including me in Grandpa's special day, apologized for leaving early, and mentioned that I wanted to clear up some confusion about recent family events. Then I attached a carefully curated collection of screenshots and documents that told a real story. Bank records showing the $18,000 I'd spent on the cruise. Screenshots of the booking confirmation with my name and credit card. Text messages from Lisa calling me selfish for not wanting to be excluded from my own gift. Voicemails from Mom crying about being embarrassed when the cruise got canceled. And the real kicker, bank alerts showing Dad's attempted fraudulent charges on my account. I didn't add any angry commentary or try to make them look bad. I just let the facts speak for themselves. The evidence was so clear that anyone looking at it would immediately understand what had really happened. No spin. No, she said drama. Just cold, hard proof of who had paid for what and who had tried to steal from whom. I can only imagine the silence that fell over that community center when people started opening those messages. 3 generations of family members suddenly seeing the real story instead of Lisa's victim narrative. Aunts and uncles realizing that their nephew hadn't abandoned his family over petty jealousy. He'd been systematically used and then discarded when he was no longer convenient. My phone started buzzing almost immediately with responses from relatives. Shock, support, apologies for not knowing what was really going on. Apparently, my parents and Lisa had been telling everyone their version of events for months, painting me as the ungrateful son who'd ruined their special anniversary over nothing. But now everyone could see the truth, that I'd been generous to a fault, trying to give my family an incredible experience, only to be told I wasn't welcome to enjoy the fruits of my own generosity, that when I'd rightfully canceled the trip I'd paid for, they'd try to commit actual fraud to get it back, that Lisa had been taking credit for my gift on social media while calling me names behind my back. The best part was that I didn't have to say a word against them. Their own messages and actions had condemned them completely. Every nasty text, every guilt-tripped voicemail, every attempt to manipulate me. It was all there in black and white for everyone to see. Within an hour, I had more family support than I had received in my entire adult life. Cousins reaching out to apologize for believing the lies. Aunts and uncles invited me to dinner to catch up properly. Even some family friends expressing shock at how I'd been treated and admiration for how I'd handled the whole situation. Meanwhile, I'm sure the community center was getting pretty awkward for my parents and Lisa. Hard to maintain your victim status when everyone at the party just received proof that you're actually the villains in this story. I almost felt bad for Grandpa having his anniversary party turn into a family scandal, but then again, maybe it was time for everyone to see what kind of people they'd been enabling. I drove home that night feeling lighter than I had in months. Not because I'd gotten revenge. That wasn't really the point. I felt free because I'd finally told my truth and people had believed me. For the first time in my adult life, I didn't have to carry the burden of being misunderstood or misrepresented by my own family. The fallout from that night was going to be epic, and I knew my phone was about to become a battlefield of angry messages and desperate damage control. But for once, that wasn't my problem to solve. I'd done what I needed to do, and whatever happened next was on them. The next few days were absolutely wild. My phone was blowing up constantly, but this time it was different from all the family drama I'd dealt with before. The messages from my immediate family told a very different story than the support I'd received the night before. Dad's voicemail started out angry, demanding to know who I thought I was embarrassing like that in front of everyone. Then they got defensive, claiming the screenshots were taken out of context, and I was making them look worse than they were. Finally, they turned desperate, begging me to call them back, so we could work this out like adults. Mom's messages followed a similar pattern, but with more guilt trips. Lots of talk about how hurt she was that I'd chosen to humiliate them publicly instead of coming to them privately. She kept insisting that they just wanted some alone time for their anniversary and couldn't understand why I was making such a big deal out of it. Lisa's texts were pure fury. She called me every name in the book and accused me of being vindictive and petty for bringing up old drama at Grandpa's party. According to her, I was destroying a family over nothing, and everyone would eventually see through my manipulation. She even threatened to post her own evidence on social media to set the record straight, which honestly would have been hilarious, since all her evidence would just prove my point. The funniest part was watching her social media presence completely change overnight. All those posts about ungrateful family members and blood being thicker than water suddenly disappeared. Her Instagram went from constant family photos and inspirational quotes about loyalty to generic travel pics and food shots. Hard to maintain your family-first image when everyone knows you tried to steal credit for someone else's $18,000 gift. I ignored all of their attempts to contact me, not out of spite, but because I genuinely had nothing to say to them anymore. They'd show me exactly who they were, and I believed them. No amount of explanation or justification was going to change the fact that they'd used me, excluded me, and then try to defraud me when I stopped playing along. Instead, I focused on all the positive responses I was getting. Relatives inviting me to family gatherings I'd never been included in before. Cousins asking if I wanted to plan a real family vacation with people who actually appreciated me. Even some family friends reaching out to say they'd always liked me but never knew how to connect when my immediate family kept me so isolated. About a week after the anniversary party, something amazing happened. Aunt Margaret, Mom's sister, called to invite me to Thanksgiving at her house. She said she'd been thinking about hosting for years, but always deferred to my parents since they were so insistent about keeping traditions. But after seeing how they'd treated me, she decided it was time for a change. Within a few days, I had invitations to 3 different Thanksgiving dinners from extended family members who were basically staging a gentle rebellion against my parents' control over family gatherings. It was like everyone had been waiting for permission to acknowledge that my parents' version of family dynamics wasn't working for anybody. The real validation came when I started hearing stories from other relatives about their own experiences with my parents and Lisa. Turns out, I wasn't the only one who'd been manipulated and used over the years. Uncle Jerry mentioned several loans to my parents that had never been repaid. Cousin Mike talked about how Lisa had borrowed his car for a weekend and returned it with damage she never acknowledged or offered to fix. Even Grandpa, in his diplomatically worded way, mentioned that he'd noticed some concerning patterns in how his daughter treated her children differently. He'd never said anything because he believed in parents handling their own family business, but seeing the evidence I'd shared had opened his eyes to just how bad things had gotten. My parents made a few last-ditch attempts to salvage their reputation. Dad tried reaching out to other family members to give his side of the story, but it's pretty hard to spin attempted credit card fraud as a misunderstanding. Mom posted some vague social media messages about forgiveness and how families should stick together through difficult times, but they mostly just made her look tone-deaf. Lisa tried the hardest to do damage control, probably because her whole social media brand was built around being the perfect daughter from the perfect family. She posted a long Instagram story about how social media doesn't show the whole picture and people shouldn't judge family situations they don't understand. But when you've seen screenshots of someone calling their brother selfish for not wanting to be excluded from his own gift, it's hard to take their calls for understanding seriously. The beautiful thing is, I didn't have to fight any of these battles. I just had to tell the truth once, clearly and completely, and let it speak for itself. Their own words and actions did all the work of showing people who they really were. No drama, no arguments, no he said, she said nonsense, just facts that anyone could verify and draw their own conclusions from. 6 months later, I'm living my best life. New apartment, great job, actual relationships with family members who see me as a person instead of a resource. I still get the occasional guilt trip message from my parents or angry text from Lisa, but they don't have the same power over me anymore. I know who I am, and more importantly, I know who they are. They thought they were teaching me my place in the family hierarchy by excluding me from that cruise. Instead, they taught me that I didn't want to be part of their hierarchy at all. They thought they were punishing me by cutting me out of their plans. Instead, they freed me from obligation to fund their lifestyle while being treated like an inconvenience. The final irony? They never did get their Caribbean cruise. Turns out, when you burn bridges with the person who was paying for your vacation, you end up staying home. Meanwhile, I took that $18,000 and put it toward a down payment on my new place. Every month when I write my mortgage check, I remember that I'm building something for myself instead of funding their ingratitude. So to everyone watching the story unfold, sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is having toxic people remove themselves from your life. They thought they were excluding me, but really, I excluded them from mine. And honestly, I've never been happier. What do you think about this whole situation? Was I right to expose them like that, or should I have handled it differently? Let me know in the comments below. I love hearing your thoughts on family drama like this. If you enjoyed this story, smash that like button and subscribe for more real-life chaos. And if you got your own toxic family stories, drop them in the comments because, honestly, some of you have way crazier situations than mine. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.